Today, the White House Faith Office welcomed religious leaders from all walks to work together to bring spirit and God back to our thinking about government. Led by White House Faith Senior Advisor Pastor Paula White and White House Faith Office Director Jenny Korn, the agenda is hotter than a prayer line: religious liberty, family values, and maybe a side of keep the government out of my pew. On this program, we pray that God's hand is on all who serve in government, regardless of their political affiliation or viewpoint. We recognize that the struggles we often cover are part of a larger spiritual struggle between good and evil. And the wonderful news is we already know that good wins in the end. Joining us now, White House Faith Office Senior Advisor Pastor Paula White and Faith Office Faith Director Jenny Korn. Paula, tell us about your work at the White House today.
Oh, exciting day. We had over 80 Hispanic pastors today for a briefing. It was fabulous. We had several speakers. We had the deputy of DHS speaking to them. We had, who else were some of the people?
We had Sebastian Gorka, who talked about counterterrorism and faith, which is amazing because faith is in everything. We also had
Vince Haley, who is the head of Domestic Policy Center, and
the Office of Presidential Personnel, because people of faith also want to serve in the administration.
It was quite an exciting day. We talked about everything from faith and immigration, our 8 tenets, what we're doing, the policy that's coming out, and just gave some of the things that is the president's agenda. Very successful day, but we've done these over and over on our 53rd day now. So we've seen Catholic coalitions, we've seen the Jewish, we've seen multiple Christians. We've had policy listening sessions where we listen to people, what's going on, what they'd like to see the administration do, etc. So we've been quite busy, up and running, as the president has elevated this to the highest level with a beautiful office for his pastors, his rabbis, and his people of faith right in the West Wing. So Jenny and I are honored to serve. We're staffing right now, and every single cabinet, every single agency will have a faith director as well.
That's so wonderful. Jenny, it seems like you're ingrained in just about every feature of what's going on there at the White House, which brings us great comfort and joy. The coalition that you brought together of Hispanic faith leaders today seems especially significant with a community that is so driven by faith. What can you tell us about the feedback you got from Hispanic faith leaders at the White House?
Well, first of all, they were so excited to come to the White House, and we started the briefing with prayer and worship, and I can tell you there was a standing ovation afterwards because we could say the prayer and worship were welcome back at the White House. So just overwhelming response. People were so happy to be there, and I said, welcome back to the White House, because a lot of those people and supporters of the Hispanic community were with President Trump in when his first administration in 45, and then, as you know, he won 46% of the Hispanic vote in the last election, which is historic of any other Republican presidential candidate in history. So the feedback was very positive, and they are going to go back to their communities and spread the word about what they heard from the White House Faith Office, from the different offices, and just spread the word about what President Trump is doing, because we almost can't catch up with to what he's doing right now. And so we gave them the tools, educated them, then to go out and spread it and communicate to the rest of their communities.
Paula, where can you see God doing some of the best work to guide government decisions from your vantage point there at the White House?
You know, there's a lot of prayer happening. In fact, we were walking over with some people from comms, etc., and they were saying, well, we do a Bible study before we get here together on Jesus Calling. Then we went to another office. They said, we do a Bible study. It's really just incredible to see so many people of faith, all faiths here, that practice their faith and feel free to. Now, President Trump has elevated faith to the highest level. As you know, there are 2 task forces in DOJ, one that is anything against anti-Semitism and also anti-bias Christian. And so he's saying anything anti-religious we're not going to tolerate. We're not going to have 300 of our churches burned down. You're not going to arrest people for praying silently in front of an abortion clinic. You're not going to be able to discriminate against people of faith or harass Jewish students or be harmful or hurtful. It will not be tolerated under this administration. He's also created a task force and a commission that will define religious liberty. He is just nonstop rolling things out for religious liberty. Also, we work on 8 initiatives: substance abuse, what we call flourishing minds, or also brain health, which we don't want the stigma of mental health care, but we know that it's a real issue when we look at our stats from the CDC and see that girls under 18, the suicide rate had almost tripled. I mean, or attempted suicide, that they're persistently sad, over 50%. Something has gone drastically wrong, and we know and we now see a return to God, a return to faith, a return to purpose, strengthening families. That there will be no men in girls' sports, making sure that our women and our girls are protected. And I could go on and on, Jenny and I both could, about all the great things that are happening. We want to also make sure that people have opportunity, that it's another way of saying alleviating poverty, but not just a handout, it's a hand up, where we want to help people to really do well in life. And so we're working just nonstop, day and night, not as much as President. There's no one like him. We just popped our head over there, and they are all still in the Oval right now, just diligently working all day. And I'm telling you, it's just exciting times. God is moving. Then I have opportunities like I did this past Monday, where I was working with the Israeli embassy and Israel, and 24 family members of the victims from that horrific October 7th massacre came to the White House. They flew them from Israel, and I met with the families, ministered to them, but also heard their stories. It was just heart-wrenching. Wow. It's one of those things that change you forever. So whether we're sitting with people and hearing their stories, or we're working on policy, or we're working with the National Security Council for people of faith around the world, this president, this administration, and this White House Faith Office is very active for people of faith.
And if you think about those policy areas you just talked about, addiction, free speech, national security, and shared values, it would almost be impossible to divorce how you think about those things from a concept of faith. And we believe that the more faith is injected into that policy making, that people will be rooted in something that is true and honest, and gets away from a lot of the games people play in Washington. Jenny, I know a lot of people of faith in my own community in Florida who at times feel that government is a distant thing, something they don't want to be involved in, that their relationship with God takes such primacy and takes such a role in their life that really politics isn't central to their thinking. But during the COVID lockdowns, people of faith really were embattled when they could not gather and worship, when they couldn't do these things. And so are you seeing in this post-COVID era an awakening among the church to get more involved in these decisions?
Yes, and I was in the White House during COVID. It was a very tough time, and when the government basically took advantage of the fact that they could shut down, and it wasn't President Trump, because President Trump was trying to get people back into church, but it was the governors and others that were saying, let's keep this shut down, and saying that churches had to be shut down while strip clubs and marijuana shops could be open. And so you were right. Then the pastors and priests and rabbis were like, wait, what's going on? Why do we have to be shut down? And that's sort of a big taste that they all got of how their religious liberties could be taken away. And so no more. People of faith need to be involved in their government. We are going to educate people on what the true meaning of separation of church and state is. That means that the government can't dictate to you what religion to me. It doesn't mean that people of faith can't be involved in their government. In fact, that's what we're doing at the White House Faith Office. We are bringing in people of faith from every denomination, every ethnic background, from every state to come into this White House and have a voice in the policy that this president is going to implement.
Do you see an awakening with the church as well, Paula?
I do, absolutely. You look at people like what Tanya Pruitt is leading up. You see these college campuses. It's happened in Kentucky this past month. We're not talking hundreds, we're talking tens of thousands, up to 40,000 sometimes at these universities of kids. I call them kids. Of course, I've been doing ministry for 40 years, but literally worshiping, seeking God, getting saved, having baptisms. You see it out on the beaches. You saw it with Greg Laurie and Harvest Ministries, where literally thousands of young people were getting baptized there on the beach. You saw it with Pastor Jensen Franklin in Gainesville, Georgia, where they had this mass revival. And then they have Ford, and literally, again, 20, 30,000 people. You see it in my son's church, Pastor Brad Knight. You see it all over. J.D. Shuttlesworth. I could just keep calling this out. There's just pockets all over of revival and God moving and Bible studies and moms and dads who've raised up, and they've just taken back ownership of their families. family and of their marriage and of their children. And we're just saying no, and of our country. Like, so God is moving. We saw it, we're 22% up in Bible sales.
Let me ask you this
question. And they say now.
Yeah, let me ask you this question, because so much of, I think, the way we got away from faith was driven by the schools. When I was first going to public school, there would be a moment at the beginning of the day where people could pray if they chose. They could meditate. They could not pray and just sit quietly. And then we got rid of that somehow. I worry that was almost like the government punishing people of faith and saying that how you would reserve this time is no longer worthy, is no longer important. We have a new Supreme Court now, thanks to President Trump. Pastor Paula White, do you think we should revisit the issue of prayer in schools?
Absolutely. We reissued under the last time when he was 45th president, we issued guidelines, but those were federal government. Look, one of the greatest things that happened was the Coach Kennedy case, because that did away with the Lemon Law, which was 50 years of bad rule. Wear your cross, wear your, take your, we can put 10 commandments back up. I mean, absolutely we should revisit it. Like you said, things were much different, much better, because our nation was founded on Judeo-Christian beliefs. And there is a hunger, because what has happened, especially these last 4 years, but progressively what led up to this, that it became such a woke society. And you saw the results of that. People are saying they know that is not what they are meant for. And so there is this real, true, genuine return to God. And I know that God has put President Trump in position. He saved his life from that attempted assassination because he's carrying a purpose. And I believe part of that great purpose is to protect the things that made America great. And that foundation is faith.
Jenny, I want to ask the last question to you. You talked about keeping up with President Trump, and I know how challenging that can be at times. I think Paul and I have been on Trump Force One or Air Force One multiple times together, bouncing around to rallies and events. And as the White House staff and as the cabinet are trying to really get this agenda moving, do you see reflections of their faith and them drawing on God and the church to try to bring the best out in their own public service?
It is so amazing. I have every staff person that I run into talks about they're praying this, they're praying over here, they're doing worship, we're doing Bible study. We're going to be implementing that as well so that all staff can come together. We had a service for Ash Wednesday. There's going to be a service for Purim tomorrow. I can't not run into somebody. The cabinet members are doing their own Bible study. I think people just feel freed that they could wear their faith on their sleeve, that there's no shame anymore, that we could talk about being people of faith, and that we're not going to be discriminated. And it's because of the umbrella of the strength of President Trump that we're able to do that. So I can't tell you how many, like hundreds of requests we're getting to meet in person. We can barely keep up with them because people are just so excited to have a voice. And this White House here, which you see behind us, is filled with people of all faiths. It's amazing.
It is lovely to hear. Our prayers are with you, and it is comforting to know that this type of work is happening at the White House. Again, Pastor Paula White, Jenny Korn with the White House Faith Office. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Matt. Be blessed.